book we are going to review today is titled Fatimah, Daughter of Muhammad, and the book is written by a Catholic priest named Christopher Paul Clohessy.
And can you tell me something about, how is this book structured? The chapters of this book, what does he want to do basically?
Yeah.
Why is he still a Catholic if he's really drawn to such a lady basically?
Yeah.
Hawza billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Dear viewers, salam alaikum and welcome to another episode of Faraj Pocast. As we had mentioned earlier in our promo rather, that our aim is to bring Hawza students, teachers, and other experts, that would sort of be relevant to the stuff we want to discuss, and have discussions that are a bit more in depth to what you'd sort of find in your local communities or other podcasts. But before I actually introduce my guest, I want to tell you how I actually came across this guest. So, as you know, the term Hawza or Islamic seminary it's a generic term, and what happens is that we have other schools underneath this place basically. So, for example, you have a famous university known as Oxford. And then they have different schools. In the same way, we have, under the term Hawza, we have different schools that is set up by different individuals. And what happens is that these schools, based on how they are set up and who they sort of, or what issues they want to address, they might have organizations underneath them. And, that's how we sort of are able to understand what is going on within the Hawza, and we're able to sort of track issues that are going on in the wider world at large, whether it's the Shia world, non-Shia, Muslim, etc. And so one day what happened was that I was sitting on social media, just, taking a break between studies, and I came across a certain channel that was addressing certain topics, within Western academia that pertain to the Shia school of thought. And I said to myself, wow, this is interesting. I think we should do something with them. So I messaged the person who happens to be my guest. We had a few meetings, and this guest obviously, and from there we sort of came up with this idea that we wanted to have a collaboration. And this guest of mine, along with other students in the Hawza, have an organization known as Kalima Online. It's a website. They post certain articles which are a bit more in depth. And we said, okay, you guys are writing your article. We have the studio, we have the equipment, we have a very talented team. So I said, why don't you come on and, let's do some episodes and, make things more interesting. So having said that, I'm going to introduce my first guest, Brother Ali Naki Zaidi, who has been studying in the Hawza for the last 14 years, and he is still studying. And he's going to sort of introduce the book he wants to review today, and, hopefully we can have a more interesting discussion. So Brother Ali Naki Zaidi, or rather Sayyid Ali Naki Zaidi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Zahra. It's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast. So do we start?
Yeah, Bismillah.
Okay.
So I remember, when you told me about this idea, because like I said, I wanted to have some good in-depth discussions, something that is not available on our pulpit.
Okay.
And, other podcasts, they, I don't want to put them down, but the idea that you wanted to review a certain book, that really excited me, So hopefully the audience, they can benefit, right? So why don't you tell us about the book, or rather you wanted to introduce your organization first? So.
It's okay, we'll start with the book.
Sure, no problem.
So the book we are going to review today is titled Fatimah, Daughter of Muhammad, and the book is written by a Catholic priest named Christopher Paul Clohessy. The book, as the title says, is about Hazrat Zahra Salamullah alayha. To give you an idea of what the book is about, I'm going to read the first few lines.
This is not a Shia writing about the daughter of the Prophet.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Catholic priest.
Okay.
He's writing about the daughter of the Prophet.
Yeah.
So he writes in the first page, the aim of this work is to appraise the life of Fatimah, daughter of Muhammad, at the level of the copious extant Arabic texts.
Yeah.
Noting throughout the vast discrepancies that exist between the Shia and Sunni sources and interpretations.
Okay.
It will be primarily in the Shia text of Ahadith that we will happen upon a Fatima who is startlingly unique and set apart from all other women.
Okay.
So at the very outset, he's trying to say that he wants to give you a survey of what the texts tell you about Lady Fatima Zahra, and he wants to see how the Sunni depiction of her is a bit different from the Shia version, or rather the other way around.
Yeah.
So, and then he wants to focus on the Shia version of the personality of Lady Fatima Zahra. So, the first challenge that he comes across is, in fact, in the Western academia dealing with the Islamic sources, this has been a really ingrained challenge for them, that how to deal with the Islamic sources which were written in the 3rd century. So the texts written in the 3rd century, or rather compiled in the 3rd century, they're telling you about an event which happened in the 1st century. So that's a gap of around 200 years. So some of the scholars in the Western academia, they said that the texts that were written in the 3rd century, they tell you more about the mentalities and the sensibilities of the 3rd century rather than showing you what exactly happened in the 1st century.
Because I remember when I was, in one of my classes in the Hawza, I remember that after the death of the Prophet, the first caliph, he basically, due to certain reasons, he sort of told all of his companions and his daughter as well to bring all the narrations, and he burned those. Basically, this is recorded. This is a fact in history. And when he burned those, what happened was that there was a sort of a certain ban. So I think that makes sense to what you're saying, because from the 1st century there is nothing recorded because there is a ban, and all other than the Quran was safe. The Quran was recorded, but all the hadiths, the narrations from the Prophet didn't make its way, so they're all burnt except something that Imam Ali stored. So this sort of really ties in with that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That happened with the Sunni sources, but for the Shia sources who were writing during the 1st century, the Usul Arba'amia, or the principal text that the Ashab or the companions were writing down, those were then transferred to Jawami Hadith, the 4 Hadith books and other books as well. So what we have today, the extant sources that we have today, they were compiled in the 3rd century. The ones that were written in the 1st century, we don't have them right now because they were transferred because of topical categorization or otherwise they were lost.
So this is for the Ahlul Sunnah or the Shia as
for
well?
The Shia as well. So we have a very limited amount of what was written in the 1st or 2nd century remaining with us. Most of it was converted into as I say, larger compilations. The earlier versions were very short. They were then categorized and transferred into larger compilations. So what we have today, most of it, the bulk of it was written in the early 4th century from a Shia perspective. So the problem that arises here for someone in the Western academia is that they want to verify whether the compilations that were made in the 3rd century or the early 4th centuries, do they reflect the events of the 1st century? So there have been varying opinions in the Western academia. There were those who said that we cannot rely upon that. And for example, people like Goldziher and then Joseph Schacht, and they were of the opinion that the hadith were forged later on. So
they were forged. So this is now there's an intellectual accusation of lying, basically.
In a way that's what they're saying. So in fact, some of them believe that the Sunnah of the Prophet wasn't there from the beginning, that the Muslims have to follow the Prophet's behavior. This idea came later on. So that's a bit of a radical view by today's standards in the Western academia. They have now moderated their versions. So that was one view.
Yeah.
And this was largely put forward by Goldziher, then Joseph Schacht, then Michael Cook, Patricia Crone. This was a revisionist school,
Yeah.
especially Michael Cook and John Wansborough, and these were called the revisionist school.
Yeah.
So this was a severe skepticism about the Islamic sources,
Yeah.
and it didn't matter for them whether it's Sunni sources, these are the Sunni sources, or whether they're the Shia sources.
Yeah.
For them, it was alike. Yeah. Then there was another movement from the Muslims in the Western Academia, for example, Fuad Sezgin, and there was another person, Mustafa Azami,
Yeah.
and then later on there was another person, Harald Motzki. So these guys, they try to show that the ahadith can be relied upon.
Yeah.
Within them, there are different variations and different approaches, but the general idea was that you can rely upon the ahadith through meticulous work and through critical assessment of the ahadith, but you can verify some of them or a bulk of them. So within this debate, the author is caught between this debate.
Okay.
So the way he tries to solve this problem is to say that basically he's trying to avoid the debate. He's saying, okay, so we know that this text or these texts that we have today, the extant texts, they were written in the 3rd century. That's okay. And we know that at least some of them are authentic and verifiable and reliable. So we're going to move on this assumption.
Okay.
So we are not concerned whether these events actually happened in the 1st century or not.
Yeah.
He's not writing a history.
Yeah.
He wants to show that this is what the Shias believe.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a basic position on a perspective. So he's saying, I want to show what the Shias believe.
Yeah.
And how it was reflected in their texts.
Yeah.
And what the Sunnis believe about Lady Fatimah Zahra and how that was reflected in their texts.
Yeah.
So that is what he's trying to say. I would read a few more lines to show that this is exactly what he's trying to do. So on page 18, last few lines, he says, since the aim of this work is not primarily a critical analysis of the Shia and Sunni texts per se, but a critical examination of the life of Fatima at the level of those texts.
Okay.
They have been read expressly as religious texts and read as sacrosanct documents which employ a specifically numinous language and around which a distinctive theology and spirituality have been constructed.
Yeah.
I have thus taken the text as face value and have read them for their value as primary Islamic religious documents.
Yeah.
So when he says that I'm trying to read the text at face value, or that I'm trying to depict Lady Fatima at the level of those texts, he's trying to avoid that whole debate and then the problems that come with it to try to solve that. So that's the basic question that he's trying to answer: how Lady Fatima is depicted in the Sunni and the Shia sources. Okay. That's the central question we have over here.
I think it's very intriguing, because I'm not an expert on the Sunni sources, because I'm in the Hawza and I'm studying the Shia side of things. So I won't comment on that as of yet. But I know that, for example, when we were in some of our history classes, we know that Imam Ali's commentary on the Quran was there. And when he made that book, which is known as the Kitab-e-Ali, he offered it. It was not accepted by some of the companions. He said, you're never going to see this book again.
Yeah.
That book wasn't burnt. He kept that book with him. And so what narrations he had recorded himself as a katib, as somebody who was writing. Yeah. That book was with him. And looking at the different imams of the Ahlul Bayt, that book was brought up. It was shown to some of the other companions. Mm-hmm. And of course, the Sunnis, they take a lot of the narrations from the Prophet. So, that can be a problem for them. But for us Shias, even though the narrations might have been banned or we've lost texts, we've got one with Imam Ali himself. And obviously, he recorded the Masaf Fatima, which is different to the Quran. Yeah. But at the same time, we still have we have the 12 Imams. we're not taking stuff from the companions. So even though we don't have some, we might have lost something from the Prophet, but the other Imams,
Yeah.
Fatimah herself, they are still narrating stuff to us, because
Yeah.
our theology tells us
Yeah.
that they take the place of the Prophet. They're not prophets themselves.
Exactly.
But from a theological perspective, we are still taking their religion from these 13 individuals, Bibi Fatima, Lady Fatima, and the other 12 Imams.
Yeah.
So let's just say we're not cut off from divine revelation.
Yeah, exactly.
And even when we look at our own books,
Yeah.
many a times the Imams are telling us that the Prophet did this,
Yeah.
the Prophet said that. So
Yeah.
as Shias, we're not in trouble as such.
Yeah.
So I think let's sort of jump in.
Yeah.
And can you tell me something about how is this book structured? The chapters of this book, what does he want to do basically?
Yeah. So the book has several chapters, but I'd like to divide the book into 3 or 4 sections.
Yeah.
So I won't give you a description of each chapter, but these 4 sections, they're arranged like this. So the first chapter, the introduction talks about the sources, which I mentioned, and the debate that has been there in the Western academic setting. The first chapter focuses on Lady Fatima as she is depicted in the Sunni sources, and gives you a historical context of her life.
Okay.
And when he's telling you about the Sunni sources and how they depict Lady Fatima, in the meanwhile, he's also finding parallels with the Shia sources. So the topic itself of the first chapter is the historical context of Lady Fatima and the biographical information of her life. The focus is on Sunni sources, but he draws a parallel with the Shia sources as well. And the second section, according to me, a second section, but that itself are 4 chapters.
Okay.
So in the second section, he's focusing on her depiction, her portrayal in the Shia sources, focusing on the supernatural characteristics that the author could find in the Shia hadith. So, for example, her intercessory powers and her ability to intercede for the believers in the hereafter. And then, for example, her miraculous birth due to the Prophet going on Mi'raj and then eating heavenly fruit, and she was conceived after that event. So he's focusing on those things, miraculous things that he finds in the Shia hadith. Those are the 4 chapters. Then after that, he interestingly, because he's a Catholic priest and he's writing from a Catholic perspective, he draws some parallels between Lady Fatima in the Shia hadith and Lady Maryam as she's portrayed or seen in the Catholic theology. So it's really interesting over there. So then after that, he tries to analyze and give us a analysis of why the Shia ahadith are different from the Sunni version. Right? So why do the Shias believe, for example, that Lady Fatima has enormous intercessory powers, or why they have their view of her is of a sorrowful lady who is weeping, for example, in the Shia hadith for her son, and things like that. So he's trying to say what happened, that this image that you get from the Sunni sources and that the image that you get from the Shia sources, why is the Shia version different? He's trying to analyze and giving us the analysis of that. The final section, appendix in fact, talks about in brief, very brief, the Sermon of Fadak. And he's translated the Sermon of Fadak into English from the original sources. And it's been a good translation, fairly good. So this is how the book is structured.
So why don't you, I know you said that Father Christopher Paul Clohessy, he's not a Shia Muslim, he's not even a Muslim. But why don't you tell us more about him?
So he was born in South Africa. He's originally from South Africa. Then he traveled to Rome to study Islamic Studies, interestingly, to the Pontifical Institute for Arab and Islamic Studies. And he learned his Arabic in Cairo.
Okay.
Then the reason that he got interested in Shiism was because of Karbala and Imam Hussein, because the Catholics, they draw parallels between Jesus Christ and Imam Hussein. They find a lot of similarities between Christ and Imam Hussein. So this is what made him got him interested to study Shiism. So right now, when he wrote this book, he wrote 3 more books about Shia personalities and Shia history. So, for example, the next book that he wrote after this was on Lady Zainab. And then he wrote about the dreams of Karbala. So there are, in the incident of Karbala, during the incident of Karbala, there are many dreams that have been narrated in the sources. So he focused on those dreams. And after that, recently he's published a book on Hazrat Abul Fazl Abbas. So he gets invited a lot to podcasts and to Shia centers and Shia universities. Even in Iran, they call him a lot, invite him to speak to gatherings. So because when he's speaking, you cannot differentiate between him and a Shia cleric. So he presents Shiism in a very good fashion. But I wanted to see, so when he speaks, he's advocating for Shiism. That's good. And the personalities that he portrays, the Shia personalities, the way he's depicting them, that's good. But how is his writing? Unfortunately, the people who are inviting him didn't really focus on his writings. So there were a lot of interviews, but no critical assessment of his works. So that's why I tried to review this book.
That's inshallah, let's see what you've prepared today. So you said that he's still a Catholic priest. But then something that others have asked him too, that if he talks so much, if he is so attracted, he is so intrigued to these personalities, like even when I obviously as a Muslim and in general human beings, celebrity culture is the wrong term, but we always look for role models, whether in the frame of religion. For example, you might look up to a scholar, or you might look up to these religious personalities, but we always seek these people to compare ourselves from one aspect. So why is he still a Catholic if he's really drawn to such a lady, basically?
So someone asked him on a podcast this very question. So he said that I'm not like other people who are pluralistic, and he was saying that I have my faith and I'm a Catholic, and I want to preserve that faith, and I see that as the best route to God, and that is God's revelation for the success of mankind. But he said that I draw inspiration from by studying these figures and personalities from other religious traditions. So what he's trying to say is that this is the religion, this is the correct religion, but other people have their own feelings and religious emotions that they express, and that can be a source of inspiration for me. So he's not trying to when he studies Lady Fatima, he's not seeing her as someone that he should follow as a religious example. He's taking inspiration from her. It's not hujjah for her. She's not infallible for him. So he has his own religion, but he's trying to study these. In fact, in Shia personalities, he's trying to find parallels with Lady Maryam or Jesus Christ. So that's his perspective.
So the next thing that I want to ask you is, do we have other similar books out there, articles on Lady Fatima, peace be upon her, which has been written by in academia in general?
Yeah, there are quite a few. So the author himself mentions a few. So starting from the earliest, around 1912 or 1913,
Yeah.
there was a person, an Orientalist, a
Okay.
French Orientalist, a Catholic priest, a Jesuit priest, and um, he was a Belgian and
Okay.
wrote about uh, Lady Fatima and the daughters of Muhammad
Okay.
and daughters of the Prophet.
Yes.
So that portrayal was really negative.
Okay.
Yeah. So uh, when you mentioned, for example, Lady Fatima, he said that she was an unimportant personality in the Islamic history. So the author tries to negate that perspective and that portrayal. Then there was someone by the name of Louis Massignon, and
Okay.
he was writing, I think maybe in the 1950s or 60s, I think.
Yeah.
So he was a Frenchman again, but he was very highly praising of Lady Fatima.
Okay.
But he found parallels between her and Lady Maryam.
Okay.
Yeah, so the perspective was that to find parallels and then try to say, for example, that these two religions are very close, or that these personalities are really close. Uh, then there's a person by the name of Vecchia Vaglieri or Valeri. I'm not sure how you pronounce that in Italian. So yeah, she was an Italian Islamic studies professor. She wrote about Lady Fatima Zahra as well, and she picked on a few items from Laments as well.
Okay.
So in general, that was a negative portrayal. So the author tries to correct that as well.
Okay.
Recently, there have been a few encyclopedia entries on Lady Fatima. Uh, in fact, perhaps in every Islamic encyclopedia that has been written in the Western Academy, you might find an entry on Lady Fatima. There's been a recent thesis written by Dr. Vinay Khetia.
Okay.
He's written his master's thesis.
Okay.
Yeah, which he defended in Concordia University. Yeah. The title was Fatima as a motive of contention in the early Islamic sources. I think that was the title.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are a few works, positive and negative. The author's work, this work that we are reviewing today, is generally seen to be positive of her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, alhamdulillah. I think this discussion is really, it's getting interesting. But I can see that we're really out of time for today, at least. So I think probably, we should end our discussion just for now, and then come back another day and, start afresh, so that, inshallah, our viewers won't get bored. So thank you so much. I think this is the warm up. So inshallah, when we get to these are the starters. When we get to the main course, hopefully we can have a more interesting discussion. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
And
Zafar.
thank you, dear viewers, for logging in. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and for some of your comments, the nice comments on our videos, whether it's our succulent parables or some of the other things we've made. And thank you for the not so kind ones as well. But do subscribe to our channel, and if you have children at home, we've got another channel by the name of Faraj Kids, so you can subscribe to this one. Please subscribe to that one. Hit the bell icon, and stay tuned for more. And inshallah, we're going to be having more. So thank you so much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.